So, it's been long. Like, long. I've had some gripes with my depression, but lol, I'm back. So, the idea for this video is to just get started on something and completing it. But for all of you that come here for the anime content, that's coming back soon too. Without further ado, let's talk about a game rather dear to me. But first, a bit of background to why I'm doing this in the first place. We all know how the word mobile games can make us feel. We've all seen the enormous amounts of dogshit, racist, corrupt, sexist, homophobic and classist ads for mobile games. Your level 1 crook to level 50 mafia boss, your 99% of people won't be able to do this, your whatever on Mother's ping earth that is. Hell, some of these even have gotten so popular that people have literally taken to develop these concepts in earnest, like the game, yeah, you want those games, right? So here you go. Now, let's see you clear them. That saw a popularity spike at the tail end of 2023. And then of course the countless ads of alleged creators, quote, playing games people say think are fake, which are as annoying as they are manipulative and drag their own reputation down as much of the ones of actual content creators, who really put something into their works. With all that presented, the purpose of this video is twofold. 1. Present actually good video games, and 2. Me trying my ass off not to seem like those kinds of probably bored creators. On account of the second aim, this video isn't sponsored by Magic Survival or their developer Lemmy. Let's begin. Magic Survival is a game developed by one Korea-based developer Lemmy. His website, adorably, shows a picture of their cat, and nothing else. It was first released in English on mobile for Android on February the 13th, 2021, and from then to now has gathered a quite sizable devoted fanbase that even spawned its own little subreddit. The word little here is not to diminish the game or its community. On the contrary, it's fairly cozy being on there with people left and right willing and smart to help you get longer runs or optimize your build, or even helping me with this video, as you can see here. Awesome folks over there, truly. There are emulators if you absolutely have to play it on your PC, but as the game is more meant as a casual experience, more meant for the time between your bus home arriving and you planting yourself on the living room couch, to play it on mobile as a mobile game will probably be a more fun, leisurely experience. Obviously, since then it's got many updates, spanning all the way from version 0.54 to its latest installment, version 0.918. Getting rid of bugs, changing stats, and introducing new maps, powers and artifacts, and adding multiple new features. Not all of them have been perfect, of course. Among other complaints, you'll find artifacts, a game mechanic we'll get to, are more highly dependent on RNG now, or that the higher difficulty now compared to 2021 makes long runs increasingly hard. However, just as there are bad things, there are good things. Normal chests appear a lot more often, to the point that there's one seemingly every minute in my own runs, and garbage spells have been buffed. Wish I could say that for my own life. Now, most seasoned players of this game probably just raised an eyebrow, or if they feel particularly strong, might have just taken to the comment section to tell me that I haven't mentioned the two most pressing issues the late updates have brought. And surely enough, I will talk about them later. I just don't feel that this introductory section is where I want to criticize the game yet. I'll look at them later, as well as providing you with a few ways to play the game and an introduction to its basic gameplay. We'll also talk about its absolutely beautiful art design, one of the core reasons I like it so much and wanted to do this video in the first place.
It's beautiful. I've looked at this for 5 hours now.
Magic Survival can be called a virtual ton of things, but among the countless hours of research I did, 3 core genres continue to come up, so we'll be going with those. Buckle up, I'll be throwing a lot of words at you. Yes, you specifically. Magic Survival is a roguelite inspired top-down casual shoot 'em up and a horde game, perhaps even one of the fathers of that genre. Chances are you heard those terms before, but chances are too that you don't know what they mean or have only a vague idea of what these genre descriptions tell you about them. I had originally intended to make this section not too long by explaining these genres in detail, but if you like me and had, prior to my research for this, no idea what those terms meant, I think a longer breakdown might be helpful and aid you in acquiescing whether this game and others of its ilk will appeal to you. I'll start with the roguelite aspect of the game. Now, a roguelite is basically like the Coke Zero of roguelikes, a genre of games that emulate the game Rogue, in that roguelites take more freedom and less aspects of typical roguelikes. Rogue, as the spawner of the whole roguelike genre, was actually developed quite a long time ago at the Berkeley University in 1980. You had to go into randomly generated rooms with randomly generated weapons, and once you die, you die. No extra lives, you start again. This is also known as permadeath, which is most often a core component of the genre, both roguelikes and roguelites. Similarly, most roguelikes have a round-based system, randomly generated worlds, grids of random rooms, multiple choices and game progression, careful exploration, story elements, and, in a sentence that I find funny, unjustifiably so, no, quote, diplomacy with the enemies. Or at least that's what the dudes at the 2008 International Roguelike Development Conference agreed to. Representative of roguelikes may be games like Dwarf Fortress or NetHack, an evolution and successor of the game Hack of the same genre. A roguelite, being the subgenre of the subgenre, usually doesn't follow most of these. They don't usually have much story, though they can feature a bit. It doesn't usually have grids of rooms, and for some reason they feature a leaderboard. They do usually have permadeath and the shoot 'em all up, no diplomacy element. An example of these would be a game like The Binding of Isaac, though funnily enough it's an outlier in that it does feature grids of rooms. And wow, did I hear the words shoot 'em up? Guess we're doing that now. Shoot 'em ups are very easy to define, and you probably already understand the core mechanic of this genre from its title. You shoot tons of bullets at enemies that, at least in more traditional shmups as they're also called, shoot tons of bullets back at you, and your job is basically to not fucking die and make the other fucking die. In more technical terms, shmups usually consist of a background that you move by moving the character, or it scrolls on its own. Permadeath or life bar, and you either fire automatically or, in older shmups, shoot manually. They also usually feature multiple playable characters with different abilities or shot patterns. A more or less popular example of that would be the Toho series and its 100 billion iterations, which I still haven't been able to play, though wanting to. Lastly, what, definitionally speaking, is a horde game? Well, this genre is actually pretty young, so there isn't a clear definition yet, only some pointers to orient yourself off. Horde games are usually 2D, have a top-down perspective, and a shitload of enemies you fight, which increase immensely the more time goes by in a run. Borrowing from roguelites, death is permanent, though health bars can be featured to somewhat lessen the blow. Interestingly, instead of progressing through different stages, you instead, in-game, have a kind of difficulty progression in the strength and number of enemies, and perhaps most crucially, a sort of meta progression outside of a run, where you can level permanent stat buffs to your characters through in-game points gathered in runs. The most fun aspect of horde games, however, has to be the rapid snowballing of your own power. In a few minutes, you can turn from a bumbling mess barely staying among the living to a god, an all-powerful spirit, or an eldritch amalgamation of magic beyond humanity and beyond your enemies, mowing through them like you would mow grass, the fiends once torturing you now reduced to but a speck of dust in your grand vision. An example of this type of game is the hugely popular, trend-sparking Vampire Survivors. I mentioned before that the genre in this way is kind of young, which is why it's even cooler when you realize that the dev of Vampire Survivors literally talked openly about the fact that he took huge inspiration from Magic Survival, making it probably the patient zero of the entire genre. Damn, alright, sorry for that, but we're finally done. Let's now actually talk about Magic Survival as you'll experience it. Magic Survival will load more or less fast, and right away you're presented with its art style. Thick, scribbly lines that amalgamate to form structures and beings. At first it looks pretty crude, but there's undeniably intentionality here in the way they're drawn and animated. They almost intentionally look crude, primal, as that is when magicians lived, or at least where people believed in them. During the Middle Ages, a cruel age of non-existing technology, primitive and idiotic medical care, namely witch hunts and countless wars, and inhuman oppressive kings, magic healers, horoscopes, and guardian angels would have been the hope of any person, no matter the status. For me, the fact that Magic Survival's art is simultaneously crude but equally intentional and, frankly, breathtaking speaks to me like we're witnessing the journals of people wanting to depict the incredible things they've seen without being able to do so. And yet, arguably, they did succeed. There's also an intangible sense of foreboding, of an underlying darkness in this starting window and throughout its gameplay. And that's before the magics and artifacts that literally reference the cosmic horrors of one H.P. Lovecraft. And indeed, this cosmic, nihilistic horror is what maybe I like most about this art style and this game. The story is secondary to the gameplay and doesn't feature much beyond small info dumps. But the basic gist is that human civilization has been completely overrun by those magical fiends, and you see that in the gameplay too. Most maps are barren, with only chests occasionally disturbing the heartbreaking visual monotony. As if like a swarm of locusts, the fiends didn't stop at killing humanity, but had to eat away at every living thing and building, every rock and every plant, until the one thing they wouldn't destroy was the very ground they were standing on. You'll spend your runs alone, chasing after mana points and gold in a frantic effort to level your spells and just stay alive a little while longer, no matter the cost. And when you'll eventually reach that godlike state and mow them down from atop the clouds, without any danger or challenge for you to overcome, it feels equally as cruel and meaningless as before. Before you have time to ponder that, however, your overpoweredness plateaus, and you will once again be overwhelmed by the fear of, and eventually, death. Life is either a painful scrapping for survival or an uninspiring look from above, and even when you reach the top and think you, in your anguish and isolation, have at least bested death and physical pain, it comes to get you like all life eventually gets taken. Now, I favor the idea that you can interpret anything into the art that you like. As they say, the author is dead. But even the author seems to agree with me on this. This idea being summarized by this quote upon reaching the death screen. magic beyond the laws of physics. However, it couldn't change the fate of all creature, only to surrender to the mortality. And even beyond all this, just look at this art. Isn't it just so cool and unique? For me, this art style really encapsulates the underlying story as well as the theme of magic and magical things. Jumping off that tangent and looking at the starting screen, you'll be provided with a few options. Start will lead you to the class selection screen, where you can choose between different types of wizardry. These don't do much to change the gameplay or spells you get, but rather give you different buffs during the run and give you a unique starting weapon. Choose one of them and you'll be directed to the map selection screen, where you can select the maps you play on and start the game. Once in-game, you'll start with the base weapon of whatever class you selected and will need to move around to evade enemies and collect these mana bulbs, from which you level up. Leveling will take increasingly more mana with each level up, and accordingly there are mana bulbs of various rarity that give you different amounts of mana. The magics you'll be able to get are randomized, and you'll need to think and strategize how you want to go forward. The magics can usually be leveled up to level 7, with a few exceptions. And when you reach that level, you'll be able to pick from 3 specialized versions of that magic, each doing different things, but mostly focusing on ability cooldown and damage. Now, here comes something important. You could just choose one of them and go on with your life, but if you really want to ramp the power up, you'll want to be using fusion magic. See, every time you level up and get to the magic select screen, at the top you'll be able to see your current level. Interesting for you now is that every time you level up to 25, 50 and 75 levels respectively, you'll get the ability to perform fusions of particular magics. For these, like shown on screen, you'll need to precisely select the specific level 7 magics shown in the description of a given fusion you want to get. Do that and you'll be rewarded with massive gains in power as well as more specialized effects. However, there's a small catch. Whenever you do a fusion, the magic colored in red in that fusion's description will be sacrificed in order to make the fusion work. So look out if you have artifacts that apply to the erased magic. They'll basically become useless. And that brings us to the next big thing. Throughout your run, you'll find normal chests containing artifacts that give you passive bonuses or stat buffs, ranging from normal to legendary. Whenever you defeat a skull wave, a kind of wave boss/boss wave, you get rewarded with a special chest containing 3 artifacts to choose from, but this time they're all legendary. Eventually, you'll die. And a lot of the game's fun comes from trying and failing to get higher runtimes. Currently in the game there are 5 playable subjects, 12 different maps, 8 types of enemies to encounter, 24 wizard classes, 21 magics to kill with, 43 fusions to combine, 30 passives to help you, and a mind-boggling 150 artifacts to find during runs. Now, before we go on talking about this game's other features, there's a big problem in this game I haven't talked about yet, but we'll have to talk about now, and that is pausing the game. It sounds banal. How could a simple feature like pausing the game to make yourself a sandwich and come back later when you're not hungry anymore be such a massive problem that it warrants its own part? Well, like everything in game development, it isn't as simple as that. I won't pretend to know anything about game development, but I know a bit of history about this game. See, whenever you pause the game and close the app, or even don't close it and just let it rest a bit, the game will fucking have an episode, okay? Unpausing, you will be able to continue playing, however, no enemies to fight will spawn, and you'll be leveling up almost every second indefinitely, to the point that movement becomes impossible, as you'll be constantly presented with the magic selection screen. In addition to that, choosing death to get out of this conundrum won't give you gems as a reward, and I'm not sure it gives you gold, effectively trashing the entire run. And so this is kind of a newer problem. At best a year old, and I don't think it's the dev's fault necessarily. Sometimes changing code to introduce new things and change item stats will mess up random shit that you didn't even think was connected to these parts, so it's probably an accident. That being said, don't be Arena, fix it. After you die, if you've beaten the kinda sort of story mode of that map, usually when you persist longer than 30 minutes, you'll get something called a journal page. These are pieces of lore that don't really affect how you play the game, but they can be quite interesting. You are able to see through those after getting them when clicking on the book button on the starting screen. In addition to displaying your collected journals, the book section also displays your encountered magic, fusions and artifacts. To the left of the book button you have your usual option button leading to the game settings. To the right of the book button you'll be able to look at your rank and game proficiency in comparison to other players, if you have Google Play games, that is. Above the rank button is the subject button, where you'll get to choose between 5 playable races, them being the human, elf, demon, spirit and jack-o'-lantern, a pumpkin. They give you passive buffs, but don't change much other than looking different from each other. You'll also have to purchase every one of them except the human. Which brings us to one of the grindy elements of the game. And when this game says grindy, it really means grindy. Like, really means grindy. Yeah. The research button is located to the left side of the subject button, and oh boy, throughout your runs, occasionally, you won't just pick up mana bulbs, but also gold, as well as gold being passively collected if you just do so much as start a run. This gold can be invested into permanent stat buffs for all wizard classes and across all subjects, which sounds great. But with great in this world, there almost always comes a catch. Honestly, a while ago in this video, I said that there are 2 major complaints the player base has with the game, but that I would cover them later into the video. I already covered one, that being the pausing issue, but well, time for a second one, baby. Flat out, it takes decades to level all those abilities, without buying gold for real money, an optional feature. You can see I'm currently sitting at level 39 and it costs 120,000 gold to buy the single research point needed for any upgrade of these buffs, and with each point bought, the cost for the next increases massively, to the point that at level 75 you'll need a mind-whopping 1,600,000 gold to buy another point and get to level 76. And that's not even the worst part about this. See, the worst part is that even after a very successful and very lucky run, you'll only ever get something in the range of 20 to bordering 30,000 gold per at least 30 minutes, and often you'll get less. Both these problems combine to give you the daddy of all grinding games, a stagnant feeling and utterly unrewarding endgame. It sucks, especially if you happen to be a completionist, and definitely needs to be adjusted in the coming updates, if nothing else. But luckily, there's a shop. You can find it by clicking, unsurprisingly, on the shop button, and you'll notice that at the top left there are actually 2 in-game currencies, the other apart from gold being gems. Like gold, gems are collected when you start and play your game. However, unlike gold, you can't collect it in-game. It's something that the game gives to you at the end of a run. They're somewhat faster to obtain than gold, and you can actually purchase gold with them, so that leveling research gets at least a bit faster. An increase from 0 to 0.1 is still an increase, I guess. In addition to that, you can purchase what the game calls research data, not to be confused with the research button. These datas serve to level up the classes you can choose from after clicking on the start button. You'll also see that you can buy gems below the data section of the shop, with the highest being a one-time purchase of 10,000 gems for 17 euros, more or less. In addition to that, at the top of the shop you can one-time purchase two options, called Salvation and Additional Support. Salvation gets rid of all in-game ads for you, but as they're not that pervasive in my opinion, I personally only encounter them every third run or so, I wouldn't waste any money on that. Additional support doubles the amount of gold that can be collected during runs, which would definitely help in your researching endeavors, so that's up to you, whether you're a purist or just want it to go faster. If you really want to dedicate yourself to completing all of the research, or even just want to know what tactics to use or which maps to choose to get more gold faster, I prepared a little something here. So, the strategy that I had the most success with, barring bad runs, is the following. After pressing start, select the class Archaeologist, which will give you a chest every time your character levels up by 15 levels, and will increase your mana bulb gain by 10%. Then choose the map City, which is described by the game to be prosperous with an unprecedented supply of goods, so, you know, probably good for farming. Now, focus on leveling and fusing these 6 magics especially. Incineration on Flame Strike and Lava Zone on Melting, which you will fuse to get Inferno. Electric Zone on Discharge and Satellite on Will of the Wisp to fuse for Lightning Attunement. And Spirit Arcane Blade with Electric Shock on Chain Lightning to get Flying Swords. Inferno will burn basically every enemy type with massive damage. Lightning Attunement deletes these pesky little enemy types, and Flying Swords is good for precision targeting the stronger, bigger enemies and bringing them down. With those done, level whatever you want until you may reach the level 100 level cap. But I'd focus on damage taken reducing stuff and area damage, since time survived does factor into the amount of gold you get. Indeed, basically this whole build is focused on surviving as long as possible while being able to move as freely as you're able to, for you can also find gold during the run. So with all that being done, just move around until you find something shimmering in a turquoise glow and take it. In conclusion, Magic Survival is a really well made and rather balanced game with a few rough edges that hopefully will be fixed and become a non-issue in the future. It has an impeccable sense of identity, not least from its amazingly distinct and disturbingly beautiful art style, and truly deserves the title of actually good mobile game. I hope you liked this video. I don't know when another one like this gets made, as I don't play that many mobile games and this channel usually goes more into the direction of media analyses, but yeah, until then, big love.